When Thomas Jefferson was 39 years old, his wife Martha died. He promised her he would never remarry, and he never did. Instead, he took his then 15-year-old slave, Sally Hemings, and she became his concubine. And she lived with him at Monticello until his death about 30 years later. At the time, Sally was not a well-kept secret. Jefferson was lampooned in the press. Sally was derided as Dusky Sally. The many, many visitors to Monticello remarked that there were a lot of young slaves about the property who looked an awful lot like Thomas Jefferson. It wasn't until 1998 that DNA evidence proved that Sally bore Jefferson 6 children, all of whom became his property. While historians over the years doubted and denied that Sally and Jefferson had a sexual relationship, they all pretty much thought that he was full of contradictions. I mean, how is it that the man who wrote, "All men are created equal," own over 600 human beings in his lifetime? And how is it that that person sired 6 more slaves? But there's more. Sally and Jefferson's wife, Martha, were half-sisters. Did that surprise anybody? Their father was John Wales, and after Martha married Jefferson, they became her property and his property. The Hemingses all moved to Monticello and lived with Jefferson there. Martha was very partial to them. She gave them special privileges and kept them very close to her in the house. None of them were field slaves. You can read all about this in a wonderful book called The Hemingses of Monticello by Annette Gordon-Reed, which was written after the DNA evidence came out, and there's lots more to learn. 2 of Sally's brothers were Jefferson's manservants and spent a lot of time with him. Last fall, Marin Theater Company put on a new play called Thomas and Sally by Thomas Bradshaw, in which he conceives of their relationship as a consensual love affair. This caused an enormous outrage. The theater was boycotted. People were deeply, deeply offended by this, that you could present a master-slave relationship as a consensual love affair. At the time that they began their sexual relationship, Jefferson and Sally were in Paris, along with James, her brother. James apparently tried to prevail upon her not to go back to Virginia. She became pregnant in Paris, and he said, just stay in Paris, you'll be free, but she came back. Patsy, Jefferson's eldest child, she was also in Paris with Sally and Jefferson. We wonder, what did she think of this relationship? What did everyone think of it? What we do know for sure is that Patsy and Jefferson tried everything they could possibly do to keep how closely intertwined these 2 families were under wraps, and they were mostly successful. So what can we learn now that we know about how intimately involved these 2 families were? What can we learn about slavery, about racism, about sexism? It seems like there's a lot more to learn. So we're now in a post-Charlottesville Me Too moment in our lives. What do we need to learn? What do we need to bring out from what's been covered up and bring into the light? What do we need to learn finally about our country? So at Mainstage West, we're hosting a 10-minute playwriting competition, and the deadline is March 1st. So we're asking you to think up something, write a scene, imagine a conversation between Jefferson and Sally when she becomes pregnant, or Sally and her brothers, or Patsy and Sally, or Jefferson and John Adams, or Jefferson and Hamilton, Jefferson and Angelica Schuyler. They all knew each other, they all corresponded. Jefferson, the man who dared to dream of a free America, did not free one single slave except for the Hemingses. Let's wonder why. Thank you.